right, we got us another old vehicle to play around with. At least this one's coming on the lot in better shape than many other ones. That's a good thing. Yep, we're back again with another project car. Not really a project car, it's really just a car we got from a friend, same guy that graced us with the DOB Ford pickup truck. He no longer drives it because he's got something newer, but as they always say, it ran when parked. And in this case, it's true because this thing started up just fine after sitting a couple of years, even on the gas that was in there for all that time, and drove on the trailer and drove off the trailer. Now, it does have a couple quirks. It every once in a while will start stumbling and stall out if you don't goose the engine a little bit, but I have to see what the hell that's about. But it's just a base model Camry, 92 Camry with a 2200 4-cylinder engine and automatic transmission. Go ahead and pop the hood. Yep, simple 2200, common in Toyota cars and trucks in that era. Pretty bulletproof engine. It's a non-interference engine, so when the timing belt breaks, you don't destroy your engine. I actually done a bunch of work on this thing in the past. In fact, I changed the timing belt on here when it broke, as well as done a bunch of AC work on here, which it still works as well after sitting all this time. So that's a cool thing. But yep, simple car. Interior is not much to write home about, but it's still there. All the seats are in good condition. Headliner, everything is in good condition, because guy took care of the car for the most part. Did have to clean the thing up because, well, there's a bunch of dust and crap in there and vacuum the floor and all that. But yeah, pretty decent shape. And like I say, just a base model, hand crank windows, manual locks, simple thing. Thing's even got a old school removable face radio in there, which I have the face to that. So yeah, got a bunch of extra parts for it too, a lot of interior parts and whatnot, so could really keep this thing going for a good while as far as the interior and stuff. Extra tail lights, got an extra spare tire. So I'm gonna have to go ahead and do a diagnostic thing on this thing, see what that's about. Stand by. Okay, in order to do a diagnostic on these old Toyotas, it's a simple matter of plugging a jumper wire between 2 points on the diagnostic port. That port's located at the right rear of the engine bay near the firewall there. But as indicated on the cap right there, the two wires are TE1 and E1. When you plug the wire in, you turn your key to the on position, not started, and the check engine light should flash. It'll flash in the numbers indicating what the code is. So if, for example, it flashes code 16, it'll flash one time, then pause. Then it'll flash 6 times, then pause. And then it'll go ahead and run the same set for any other codes that you have. Now, I did plug everything up and didn't get any codes. So after doing some research, what we found was there's more than likely a problem with the ignition module, because we have a very poor tach signal as far as our RPM gauge, and every once in a while the engine will just start stumbling while it's just running nice and smooth. And from what some Toyota forums said, the ignition module is probably starting to flake out, probably starting to get hot, and being an old electronic component, they will start acting up. But luckily, it's a simple fix. Right there where that air box is at, take the top half off, and that little box right there is our ignition module. Simple thing, 2 Phillips screws, and that little box is out. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove the 2 Phillips screws in that old box and put a new one in. So stand by. Okay, we have our ignition module swapped out, and I tested everything, and we're essentially having the same problems. So the next area that was mentioned when you have no codes, because we have no codes, is the ignition coil. And that unfortunately is in the distributor. Unfortunately, because of the idea that I'm probably going to have to take this thing all the way out, because it looks like there's some form of retaining screws or something that look like they come in from the bottom. And in order to get all that out, this whole thing's going to have to come out. And if anybody's ever played with distributors in an old school V8 or 6-cylinder, they know how important it is to make note of where the rotor is at. So when you put everything back in, you retain that same orientation, so you don't have to go through the headache of retiming your engine. At least this distributor is held in, just like most, by one little bolt right there. So looks like about a 13 millimeter, probably a 12 knowing some of these foreign cars. But I'm gonna go ahead and pull this thing out and be right back. All right, we have our distributor out, and looking at the bottom, or what would have been the bottom of the unit, we could see on our coil here, there's 4 bolts holding this thing in. That's why this thing had to come out. Let me swap this thing out. All right, we got our distributor bolted back in, cap, rotor, all that stuff is in place. Timing has been reestablished based on where I marked that line right there by the bolt. So we could go ahead and start this pile and see how she acts, because the original symptom really didn't start up until after the car ran for a good while. So stand by. Well, car still started up pretty quickly, all things considered. So at this point, we're gonna go ahead and see how this thing runs. Well, let it run and see how everything goes. I'll be back in a little bit. Well, the coil didn't work, nor did the ignition module. Thing seems like when it warms up to a certain point, it starts stuttering, but it will take the throttle. Now again, we're not getting any trouble codes or anything, so have to start looking at some other areas before we try to rule out something like an oxygen sensor that may just be malfunctioning and not recording anything. So as we could see here, we removed the throttle body because we need to disassemble this thing and check this thing out to see if the idle air valve is sticking or something that may be causing it to act up. I don't know. We're pretty much fishing at this moment. So again, stand by and I'll see what I can come up with. All right. After toying around with everything, the last thing being the throttle body and specifically the idle air valve, which all seemed to be good. After looking at a forum, another suggestion for this very common stumbling problem on these cars was checking the EGR valve. And checking the EGR valve was really nothing more than disabling the damn thing. So I pulled the vacuum line off of the pot on the EGR valve, and so far the bitch is holding its own. It's running pretty steady. I guess the computer eventually learned that it does not have the EGR in the system anymore, so it kind of went ahead and tweaked everything to do whatever it needs to do to keep the engine running somewhat normal. AC's even running on this thing, and it'll go into gear. But yeah, maybe at some point in the distant future I might change the damn thing, but for right now we're just trying to get this stupid thing to actually run somewhat decently enough that it could be driven. So that's really probably the next thing on the list, is test driving this pile. So yeah, stand by. Car did pretty good going up and down the road. Everything ran good. AC even ran good still. Engine, transmission were all good. No hesitations or stuttering or anything of the like. Don't have a speedometer or a tachometer, so gonna have to look into that later on. But I would figure we were probably going upwards of 50 mile an hour, give or take, on the roads, and she still did pretty good all the way through that. But another thing we need to be addressing next is these raggedy door handles, because as time progresses and sun progresses, the plastic got dry rotted and the things became brittle and broke off in my hand. Luckily, I have a pack of door handle assemblies for all 4 doors, so I'm gonna have to see how to pull the crap off in these panels so I could safely get the panels off without damaging any clips underneath, so I can actually get into the door to replace those. So give me a second, let me grab some tools to start examining this thing and pulling it apart safely. Stand by. I'm actually liking sitting up in here. This air is blowing snowballs. Very welcome reprieve on a hot day like this. But looking at our door, it's only a few fasteners. We got a couple screws here and here that have to come out. There's a little snap-on trim piece right here hiding a screw. There was something right here, but no longer is. And then there's a little horseshoe shaped clip that goes behind our door handle, our window crank, to pop that out. And the rest of this, I think, just has little snap pegs to hold the overall panel in place. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull our window crank and our few screws out, and then start looking at what we have to do to pop this panel off. Alright, we have our interior panel off, sitting right over there. The only thing I had a problem with was the little trim piece going around our door handle. There's a little metal piece right there that kind of acts as a latch point for that trim piece. So I had to work the panel down enough to allow that little trim piece to move free of that piece of metal to get it out. Anyway, we also have our plastic right here that we need to get out of the way enough so we can get into the door, and we have to remove those fasteners right there. You can see it's like a couple of bolts there, but we'll need to remove those in order to get the handle assembly free of the door body. Of course, you got some linkages that have to come off too, but that's neither here or there. So I'm going to go on in there and do that. We're going to make note of something, but it's not affecting our job at hand, but apparently somebody who worked on this car in the distant past before I even got my hands on it felt inclined to perform some butchery on the door body here, because, well, look at that crap. Somebody just went in there with a saw or something and sheesh, chopped the crap out of that. But anyway, there's another bolt. I don't know if you can kind of see it, camera focuses, but there's another bolt in there, along with the one that we saw from that angle right there, along with our linkages and stuff. So just wanted to make another note of that, and this crap right here. So let me get my tools, let me get this garbage out. Stand by. All right, got a better angle here. There were 2 screws in place holding the assembly in. One of the screws held the tumbler in on the left. There's supposed to be 2 screws in there, but whoever worked on this thing before and chopped the door up probably omitted that second screw on that tumbler and didn't bother to find another one or whatever. But I'm going to find another one to put on there, because I can imagine that over time that tumbler might bounce around enough to where I might not be able to unlock the door properly. But anyway, there was just the one linkage hooked up to the handle going straight down. Simple little clip that you pop free and rotate it, and then just pop the metal rod out of the lever on the door handle assembly. So with that all said and done, those little tabs on the bottom, just had to work those up enough to be able to pop the door free. Well, I would do that if I had 3 hands, but I don't, so let me go ahead and get this out. Stand by. All right, we have our new door handle assembly, all inclusive with the springs and everything. Found another bolt to go in that 3rd hole for the key tumbler portion. So with that, I'll go ahead and pop this in, get everything snapped back together so I can move to the passenger door there and see what that'll take to pop that off. And then after that, we're just going to go ahead and get the other 2 doors done because, well, they're just mirror images of the driver's side. So stand by. I had to pull this thing back out with the tumbler portion, so there will actually be 2 rods you have to pop loose, the lever rod and the tumbler rod, which I ended up needing a pick to be able to get in there enough to snap it free because it's in an awkward spot. But you'll need to get this out too in order to get this bolt in. Apparently the other guy didn't do this, so he just left everything in there and just put these 2 bolts that mount the thing into the door. We're gonna do it right, so let me continue. All right, we got everything snapped in. The little weather stripping rubber gasket, whatever you want to call it, is in place straight. Our tumbler is in straight. All our linkage rods are in straight. So we're good to go on the door handle. So now we could go ahead and put our panel back on and get this door all buttoned up. So let me go ahead and get that out of the way. All right, we got our door panel back on. The little trim piece for the internal lever, window crank, the armrest, all that stuff is snapped back in. The little triangular piece by the mirror mount. Thing I noticed was there were a couple of plastic pieces on the door that would have held some type of tread or something, but they're just plain old plastic pieces. And it looks like the way the screw holes are, they're either missing something inside or they're just trashed, I don't know. But there were no screws in these 2 holes anyway. So everything is solidly mounted all in all, because we got 2 heavy bolts here, a heavy bolt there, peg down there. It's hooked into the top of the door here, so all things considered, this thing is in. And the last thing to do, pull this little plastic garbage off, and we're pretty much ready to rock and roll on that door. So now we can move on to that door. Yeah, with the sun in our eyes, we're going to try to look at this back door on the driver's side. We have our normal little clip trim cap pieces hiding the different bolts, and of course the armrest right here that I already took off. So we got a bolt right there, a couple bolts right there. Now on the sides I noticed something. There's these special little clips in here that, I don't know, it appears like they pop in and you can pull them out. I'm sure you reset them after you get them out, so when you put them back in, they can be able to snap in place and not pop out on their own. Of course, the window crank has that little horseshoe shaped clip I have to pull out. And then of course we got our piece right here that we have to kind of snap free after we actually get the panel free enough to have that extra movement. So I'm going to get the remaining couple of funny snap clips on this side, and then we're going to go ahead and start popping this panel off. Well, this is a nice turn of events. In order to get to the screw that holds our handle assembly in place, I'm going to have to take apart the latch mechanism, or at least disconnect it from the door frame, so I could open up this area right here to get to that screw or bolt or nut or whatever. And of course this door looked like somebody went happy with a saw and everything. I don't know why, but yeah, it's really damn ugly. Jeez. But the main thing is getting this mechanism out so I can get into this door. This probably has something to do with trying to get this handle changed out. Let me go ahead and get this done. After removing the 3 bolts for our latch assembly, I was able to work the thing down enough to open up this area so I could remove that bolt right there. Of course, that bolt came out easily. Our our door handle assembly just uses this, if we could focus, uses this plastic piece right here to make direct contact with the lever on the latch assembly, so there's no linkage rods or anything. We had the pop free. Our door handle assembly is pretty much free and clear and ready to just snap on out. So that's what I'm gonna do. Snap it on out, snap our other one in. All right, we got our new door handle mechanism in place. Pretty simple setup. Once it's snapped in place and the latch mechanism is bolted back in place, there's nothing else to do. Don't even have to align anything in most cases. Just bolt everything up and it sits where it needs to sit, so our door handle can actually open the door. So now, with all that said and done, I could put our panel and crap back together and wrap this up. All right, got our door panel back on with all the other little hardware ready to go. Doors open like they're supposed to and close, so we're ready to go. Luckily the passenger side handles are still pretty intact, because that side was actually facing the shaded side of the yard where this car was stored, whilst these doors were taking the brunt of the sun, explaining why they dry rotted and broke. But yeah, we're all good on our door handles now. So all right, well, that pretty much does it for the little bit of time we have with the Toyota. Everything is going good. We have door handles and engines running, and obviously the car is driving just fine. There's still a few little odds and ends we got to look at, like the speedometer and tachometer, but that'll be for another video. And there might be a couple other little odds and ends, like maybe putting another radio in here that is Bluetooth compatible, since the one that's in here is actually an old school removable face radio. So yeah, stay tuned for a few more exploits on this daily driver, soccer mom, grandma type car. I think these things are probably going to start coming up in the world eventually as the next phase of classic cars, in a sense, because, well, people that want something that's somewhat modern but still considered old while not having to spend a crap ton of money, they're going to start coming after more of these little cars like this, because, well, they're pretty simple to work on, and for all intents and purposes they're still widely available. So yeah, might want to think about looking at some of these cars eventually, because they're going to be the next phase of sought after classic cars, I believe. So till the next time, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, notifications, TikTok, all that good stuff. Stay tuned for more, because there's going to always be more. There's always something to do. So as usual, like I said, do all that crap for me, and I will catch you later. I'm out.